I'm all for making like really funny jokes and whatnot, like haha funny, but this might be actually the one video my family will legitimately watch. So, if you're watching, hello, this is what I'm going to school for. Anyways, hello everyone, my name is Gracie Del Rosario, and welcome back to another video. Oh my god, I'm sounding like an influencer as more of these go by. It seems as though as I never learned my lesson, because today I am going to be doing a video for my honors college winter term class final-ish. I'm saying ish because technically this video is not the full component to the project slash final. This was meant to be a smaller component, but then it turned into a small component. So, really digging my grave here, but you know what? It's content. Today we are going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart and a lot of other people I know's heart, and it's the Philippines. The Philippines, the grand old Philippines. As much as I want to be like all happy and dandy about it, because there is a lot of good stuff to talk about the Philippines. Today we are talking about more specifically the climate and environmental crisis that's been happening, and more specifically how does that affect the people, the government, and just worldwide, or even how it doesn't affect the worldwide and how we don't talk about it enough. So in order to talk about this broad topic, I brought along someone who probably has more credentials and knows more about the environment than I do. And that, my friends, is my very own brother. When my brother is not terrorizing my existence or getting chastised by my family for his choice of hairstyles, he's actually a undergrad for environmental science here at the University of Oregon with a minor in architecture and is currently pursuing his master's degree in architecture. But he will tell you all that in a minute. So, without further ado, this is a very long-winded interview. We talk about bits, pieces, everything, and I just hope it's enjoyable and informative. So without further ado, transition, whoa! Okay,
Sorry.
what? Do you want to introduce yourself to people who do not know you?
Well, my name is EJ Del Rosario, and I am the proud older brother of Gracie.
Jesus
Um,
Christ.
I'm a first generation immigrant, and I moved to Portland, Oregon when I was 5. And I just kind of grew up in the Gresham Portland metro area, and I went to school for environmental studies at the University of Oregon, minored in architecture, and now I'm doing my master's of architecture at the University of Oregon Portland campus. Oh yeah, that's a good one because I feel like there's a lot of things that could kind of go along with why I went to environmental studies. When I finished high school, I was at a complete loss. Like, of course, I'm a first generation student, but I also knew that I had like a really incredible opportunity where I wanted to do something where I made sure that I made, I don't know, moving to the United States like worth it for me and my family. And I'm really lucky that mom and dad were super supportive about what I wanted to do. So I didn't want to like disappoint them. And so what I thought that like a trajectory for me was like I want to do something that one that I loved, two that I understand, and three like something that will a way for me to give back to the world because like I've always wanted to help people. And I feel like that's just like a really fortunate like attribute that like dad taught us and mom as well, of course. But I didn't want to be a doctor because I'm afraid of blood. And so with that, I saw environmental studies. I just saw that it was like, I don't know, it taught you the environment, taught you how people connect to nature and taught you the history as well as the trajectory of where, I don't know, the world was going. And so I thought that going with environmental studies, it was like a way to like have the as many doors open for you. I don't know. It wasn't really the way I thought it was going to turn out, but I mean, I'm not mad that I took it.
I remember, so this is for context for the video. We went to the Philippines for the first time in what, 10 years? Do you remember that house we saw? Where it was basically like half of it was basically submerged in water, but there was still somebody living in it, as if it was like
Yeah,
nothing else.
that was Lola's I think brother-in-law. That guy was
Mm,
related to us. And that's kind of
yeah.
funny you say that because like, that story or that illustration of what we saw of like an older gentleman just minding his own business, like he probably like 80, 90 years old, like he's just hanging out his front porch. But then all of a sudden, if you look out, he's like three feet deep in water. You can just tell, like, I mean, he just has to look at that, you know? Like that's insane to me that like that's the norm. I guess what I'm trying to say, it's like I understand the workings and like it's almost like I feel like I'm burdened with the truth, or burdened with the perspective of that. I mean, I guess just to like backtrack, like I got into architecture because when I came out of undergrad, I mean, I minored in architecture because I thought it was really cool. And it's kind of, I mean, I've always had like a huge creative side um, that I never really kind of took up on because like I was afraid of like being a starving artist. But essentially, like I got into architecture because while I was minoring, like the architecture program as well as the studies program, they're kind of like hand in hand. Like not a lot of people know this, but there's actually a lot of cross instructors going back and forth of either going into landscape or architecture, teaching environmental studies courses that fulfill degree requirements. And so with that, I was able to take classes that kind of gave me both perspectives of like the built and natural environment. And coming out of undergrad, like, I mean, environmental studies, you can't really do a whole lot with it. Um, but when I saw that you can supplement that with architecture, with the skill set of an architect, like that was kind of like a catalyst um, for me to see that like I can use like environmental studies into architecture. And like what I love about just like architecture and sustainability is that there's so many facets to it. And of course, like a lot of people understand, like, yeah, you can look at like PV arrays, like solar panels, or looking at materiality. But I guess like for me, what I think I like really appreciate from having a perspective as an environmental studies major going into architecture is that I have realized that for us to actually be a sustainable society, it's not from utilizing the most advanced technology out there. It's really redefining how the way we live. It's the way how much we're supposed to like consume or what our activities day to day that kind of produces like how much carbon we like put into the atmosphere. I mean, I love like, obviously I still love all the passive strategies going into architecture. But I guess for me is like, I want to become a designer where I help people, like connect to nature, B, and B, help people work with nature, and C, help people develop a simpler way of life, either through designing homes that are super functional and efficient, but also in a way where it makes people appreciate the environment. Well, I guess I've actually told a lot of people if they were considering going into environmental studies or science, unless if they have something to supplement or a plan after bachelor's, I would say to just minor in it. What I've realized is that like once you kind of hit like the top classes, which I mean, if you took, all your classes straightforward, and like around when you top out, it's like around junior, and like at that point, you're kind of just repeating the same concepts over and over and over again, you know. And I guess for me, it's like I guess like I don't know, it's the environmental studies and science program like really looks into our environmental issues as in connections to issue or connection to nature in definitely a holistic way. But I kind of wish that there was more engagement or kind of global um, approaches to um, climate issues. Like we stayed in Eugene for a lot of reasons, like working with the community and understanding subcultures and yada yada yada. But I don't know. It just feels like, well, for one, it's like underfunded. Like the building is not huge at all, and it just seems like I don't know, like a little brother program in a sense. You know, I just wish that we had more professors that were kind of leading the charge and being a little more radical and like trying to get people like crazy about the environment. Like it's I don't know, the major's very gloom and doom, and at a point you just become numb to hearing all the environmental issues. Like I think that's kind of what happened to me. Like when I hear about stuff with Ohio and stuff in the Philippines, I've just become numb to it. You know, like obviously I care, but like I don't know. I just wish that there was more instructors that were crazy and like radical.
With your emphasis on the global impact, or like the lack of global impact that the program provides, do you wish, like more specifically, if they had that global focus, how would you utilize that, and would you utilize that, like, you know, coming back to the Philippines about their like environmental issues, or just, you know, in your repertoire, how would you?
If I'm able to dream without zero budget,
Yeah, sure.
I wish there was an ability for more students to go out of the United States and more specifically out of developed world. Like I want more people to like go out there and see how the rest of the 70% of the world works. Like it's I don't know, like Gracie, you and I are really fortunate to have been able to see like what a really developed world looks like and what an underdeveloped world looks like. And the contrasts are huge. I guess we haven't talked about it a whole lot, but I mean, it's like something that you think about every single day, almost, you know, like how well we have it. Like, I don't feel like a lot of people understand too that like a visa system for a lot of countries to get to the United States or any other developed world, it's a lottery system. You know, you have to interview for it, and it doesn't matter if you look good that day or you have like a clean slate. Like the person that you're being interviewed by, they have the ability to choose whether you get in for the country or not. And so I guess like what I'm trying to say is that I don't know, I feel like a lot of people here do like or is like in the United States, like they don't want to go out and experience what those developing worlds are like. And I feel like if they did, they would be way more receptive towards our way of life here, you know, either by its like the amount of consumption that we have with materiality or even social dynamics.
Yeah. And you know, again, this is a video more or less focused on like, you know, our connection to, you know, environmental science, climate change, and more specifically to the Philippines. That's it, because again, we are very fortunate to be in an area where like that stuff isn't technically normalized and it just doesn't happen. Like, we're very fortunate to be in a position where we don't have to experience basically life-threatening like climate-related events on the daily. And with something like the Philippines, that is unfortunately extremely common, especially, you know, during tsunami season. You just see a bunch of like rain falling and floods, and you know, and I remember both times we went in the most recent years we had to experience, rising sea levels or just like rising flood levels. Like I vividly remember there were some roads that existed, but they just don't anymore. And it was all in the span of 5 years. And they're all just submerged underwater. And our relatives just have to drive through it like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Just a
No,
easy
I
segue.
mean, I definitely agree. I mean, like, even to our last trip, I don't know, like every time we go back to the Philippines, which is like around 4 years or so, there's always something huge or something different, significantly, that happens. Like, I guess for me, what shocked me the most on our last trip was the new schedule system now for people to go into town based on the rising tides. Like, I might be wrong, and maybe they've always had a system like that, but like this time around, where it was insane to me to see, for one, rush hour happens at like what, 6 a.m. to go into town, and then the later rush hour is like, I believe, what, 11 a.m., just so people beat the tides. And what people, I guess, like to kind of illustrate those tides, it's like it's these the when you're like on the road, which is also, by the way, built up like probably 3 times now to like make it higher than the sea level. Um, it's the water in some portions still gets like around 3 feet deep, and it's the water is, for one, also stagnant, and there's also salt water. So like I remember when we were going into town, there's so many houses with gates eroded with rust, and people just walking around with just flip-flops and just like sloshing around like it's nothing. It was insane to me. Kind of crazy to me that it's just getting worse and worse, you know? And it seems like there's not going to be a regenerative solution. Well, for one, I think the main issue, especially in the Philippines, is just the politics. With so much corruption through the different colonial rulings from different decades, it has just set the Philippines up to such an unstable state. Corruption is so accepted there, you know? And so with that, um, it just kind of creates like a breeding ground for issues. I guess with that being said, like it filters into the issue of infrastructure. I think I saw a statistic recently about how the Philippines is like the leading country in the world for disposing trash into the ocean. Well, it's because there's not an actual infrastructure for trash removal for the entire country. The Philippines is becoming super overpopulated, and there's not enough jobs. And I mean, the number one export of the Philippines isn't a product; it's actually like people. Yeah, like it's insane to me what's going on, and it's unfortunately a domino effect. I'm definitely not an expert in the political sense of like the Philippines, but and honestly, I would even consider myself as a foreigner at this point. You know, like I look the part as a Filipino, but I don't like culturally call myself like an actual like Filipino in that sense, if you know what I mean. Like I'm Filipino, but I'm not, a Filipino in the Philippines. But from what I'm able to see, it's that it's I don't know, the corruption in the Philippines spanned for so long. And I mean, I remember like at one point, like being a politician in the Philippines was like the most like deadly job in the world or something like that. And so for me, like it's kind of unavoidable at this point. I think it really has to come down to people and what like a societal shift in a way. Yeah, no, I mean this is like a spicy question because I feel like this question's
Yeah.
been asked for a lot of people, like Filipinos as well as like politicians in general. I guess what I'm about to say too, it's controversial, but honestly, like how Singapore, I don't know if you know how Singapore was developed, right? But how they did that and where they are now is, I feel like kind of a trajectory where the Philippines can go if they're trying to achieve, I don't know, some sort of economic boom like they did, you know? And what that is like almost like an authoritarian figure to that is uncorruptible. But I mean, of course, that's impossible. But rule in a way where like the interests of the people and the country are actually in a balance, you know? I don't know. In the Philippines, culture, it's very, very loose there. I mean, like it's a huge archipelago with like a different culture for each town and each island. Just to, like, I don't know, just for developing a different culture like on a snap like that, it's not going to happen, you know, unless if there's some sort of actual like authoritarian like position being installed in the country. I mean, education for one is not. It's like it's crazy to me like how to describe it. But essentially, like public school is not an option if you want a child to go to college. You have to take them to public school or private school. And also, a lot of those private schools are like Catholic schools. And so, I don't know, education in itself is very tricky in the Philippines, and it's really difficult. I mean, like I feel like that's actually how we have the son of a dictator back into power is because of uh I mean, it's the fault of the people. They voted him into it, you know. And I think it's because a lot of Filipinos were susceptible to um, false information.
It's really interesting to do this video purely because, we're both, I mean, for me, I'm a purebred, like born in America, but I'm born from, immigrant parents. But even so, even though you're born in the Philippines and slightly raised in your youth with, mom and dad, but you moved here in America early enough to basically have that whole US education experience and not really have to go through what our nieces and nephews and our cousins all had to go through in terms of that type of education system. So
Mm.
I think it's just really interesting to make that type of comparison and put things into perspective for both of us, because again, I do agree that we sometimes take things for granted, both as immigrant children and as just Americans in general, but how we're fortunate enough to be have this type of education, or the variety of education for that matter, as opposed to our home country that is just so linear.
Yeah, and
um
also in addition to that, I mean, like it's culture is such a huge part of of a Filipino. Our family is everything, you know. Like, of course, your mother would die for you, but you're also raised to die for your mother. Um, and I don't know, it's just like it's hard to explain like my friends that are like not, you know, they don't understand like how we work, but it's there's so much on the line as as being an immigrant, you know, to make sure you're all right, make sure the sacrifices of your family are achieved, you know, like because essentially like mom and dad, I mean, they grind every single day and they are basically sacrificing their lives for us right now to do what we're doing, you know. And all we have to do is just make sure we get good grades. That's all they ask for. Hmm. That's a good question. I feel like I don't know. it's kind of hard because I don't feel like the Philippines really get broadcasted at all, except for the either for Duterte or for Bong, like
Or like Manny
new president.
Pacquiao.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or Manny Pacquiao. We don't really get represented well, you know. I mean, I will say, like, what we get represented well, and it was like for the Filipinos that work with Cesar Chavez. Um, and that's kind of it. That's kind of our own little stake in the United States, except for being colonialized. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. There's not really a lot of representation, so it's. I mean, there's a lot of like environmental atrocities going on in the Philippines, like a lot. And I mean, we just don't get covered for it. Like honestly, like what happened in Ohio, it's I wouldn't be surprised if that happened in the Philippines, you know. Like I mean, it's oh man, like if I was able to just like put like a picture of like what a road is in the Philippines with like all the toxic fumes, the people speeding, the pedestrians walking anywhere, the fast motorcycles, it's completely different, completely different. Um, but I guess I don't know. I feel like if there was more representation, there would definitely be more, of course, like action against this those atrocities. But then again, it's like, will the Filipino like government actually do anything about it? Like it's I don't know, it's crazy. Like there is kind of like a huge asphyxiation for American culture in the Philippines, you know. And there's even like a huge like like a sensation of beauty for being able to speak English fluently. um, and so I don't know, like if there was more, I guess, environmental action for the Philippines, like maybe just maybe like Filipinos will finally like start thinking about how like the systems there are problematic. Like, of course, there's a lot of like issues that go around it, and there's a lot of dynamics that go along with it. I'm by no means an expert in the things going on in the Philippines, but I guess that's just my input from what I've been able to see.
Yeah. We are heading to the end of this interview. Is there anything else you would like to say about, environmental science in general, or just, more pertaining to the Philippines, anything?
I don't know. I feel like I just wish that more people were able to see what we were able to see, you know, from like the crazy infrastructure as well as our crazy culture. And it's just heartbreaking because, like, with all the issues that we have, like in the Philippines, like environmentally and politically, like, I've noticed that Filipinos are still like one of the most loving and happy people in the world for what they have. And so, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of doom and gloom from what we're talking about. But I guess there is kind of a lesson learned too, like there's a lot to learn from a lot of from Filipinos and how they deal with those issues and how they still are happy, you know. So that's it.
Yeah, that's the end of this interview. Thank you so much for agreeing to this on a very short notice. So, again, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I just hope you learned something. And hopefully, I do not get scouted out for this for all the wrong reasons. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you, I don't know, some point. I don't know how to do outros. You're still here. So
Yeah.
all right, goodbye.